Oh, hello everyone.
Hello, and welcome to Broadsheet on the Telly. It's Thursday, the 11th of June, in the year of our Lord 2020. Joining us tonight on the show, joining us tonight on the show. See, this always happens when you start the shows. You have to click buttons. No one knows why I said that. So joining us, as always, on the show, the Queen of Crumlin, we have RV, as she wants to now be called officially, Vanessa Foran. Hi, Vanessa.
Arve. Yeah. Hi everybody. And to mind this thing with the Queen. Fluffy's very disappointed you're saying that, by the way. He's the Queen.
Queen in waiting, then we'll call it, Eric. Then we have the King of Silicon. Silicone. Oh, I think he's frozen, is he? He's frozen.
He's pretending to be frozen.
All that technology, surrounded by all that technology, and he's frozen on the screen. Well, we did have Derek O'Donoghue before. Derek, are you there? This is live. You wouldn't get this on the Late Late Show. And we have a very special guest with us tonight. Those who've been following the shows over the years, over the year and a bit. I don't know how long are we doing this. Too long, says a lot of the trolls. But Vanessa, if you want to do the intro, because you'll do a much better job than me.
I wouldn't. You would never think the improv star would bow to me and say I would do it. But as viewers, you'll remember Marco. He's a great friend of Broadsheet on the Telly and on Broadsheet. And you remember he did the show with us back in the day, the Late 8 debate. And then he was on Broadsheet a few times, somebody robbed his bike and stuff like that. But Marco was one first on the street 2 weekends ago, I think now, with his Black Lives Matter poster and his, the weather was lovely. So obviously Marco was in his bikini knickers pants and his, tight top and all done up. But just before we talk to Marco about the Black Lives Matter protests and his role in it and what it means to him, I just need to reintroduce you to my conflict of interest. There's a very blatant conflict of interest here in that Marco and I are friends, but he's also my hairdresser. So we have what's known as a connected party and a related party relationship, and obviously they would be familiarity. So I just wanted to declare that conflict of interest first. Maybe people might recognize that that's how you declare a conflict of interest, viewers, and anyone in RT compliance standards and anything like that want to take notes. I'm happy, I'm here all week. So Marco, over to you. Tell us, I know the protest started following Ms. Floyd's death, right? So can you take me from there where your role involved, because you were very active from pretty much from the off once the protests started.
Yes, hello everybody. Thank you for having me back. Well, it started after the video of the death of George Floyd went viral. So then the movement Black Lives Matter it's already been active since 2013 in the States, and then because it became viral, the Black Pride Ireland posted online 2 weekends ago that if we could just make a little posters and put in our windows just to show solidarity to the protests in the States. But then a friend of mine and I, we had the great idea of going to the streets with the poster and just stand in the middle of Grafton Street and just stand there and have conversations with people. And then online, people were talking about it quite a lot. And then I can't say for sure who had started the first protest here, but then it became so big, the first protest, that it started from the GPO, not from the GPO, from the post office and on O'Connor Street, and we marched all the way down to the American Embassy. That was on the first weekend. And then the second protest on the following weekend was the bank holiday weekend, Black Pride Ireland, and also
sorry, I'm going to stop you there, Marco. Yeah. So the first weekend it was small, collective, organized, this Irish Pride group. Am I right?
And no, the first weekend was, I think, was independent.
Yeah, that's
I think
what.
people,
Yeah.
people started just talking online. I can't say for sure who was that
Okay,
started, but
but
yeah.
did I see you? Did I see you sort of just rocking up to Grafton Street on your own with your poster? You know, the top of Grafton Street, folks. There's
Yes,
the sort of
you did. You
the
did.
triangle, I suppose. It's effectively like a soapbox area, isn't it? Like the speaker on the corner area.
Yeah.
So you were under your own steam anyway, and then the movement started to build in Ireland. Started to build around you. Well, around that then.
Around that day,
build up.
around that day, because Black Pride Ireland wanted just to show solidarity to the family of George Floyd and the families of everybody in the States that have been, they have lost any family member by the brutality by the police. So I saw online they were saying, if you can, just get your poster out, put it on your window or whatever, if you're on your shop, whatever. And I just went to the streets.
Yeah, no, it
Basically,
was totally you, by the way, viewers. It was totally Marco just to do it on his own, to rock down. He wouldn't need to be told or nudged or encouraged at all. And so the one at the bank holiday weekend is the one that has caused the angst and the criticism, I suppose. But we're now over 2 weeks and it's still building. But I've noticed now this week it's gotten quite cynical and nasty, you know, talking about George Floyd's criminal background. And this is now where I'm going to fall out with those complaining, really. But where are you now on sort of the campaign and keeping it going? And
well, I'm part of a study group as well, formed with 10 other friends that we study Black history and Blackness and Black culture. So I'm studying and just literally talking with people, whoever comes to me and have any questions, or friends or even family, just to understand what needs to be done from now on. Because one thing is just going to the streets and protesting about one thing, but what needs to be done now, it's because it's a whole system that we need to change. It's a whole way of seeing things that we need to change. It's a whole culture. It's the way that we are used to live that we need to change. So I'm continuing the conversation. I'm using my my social media just to continue to repost anything interesting and anything valuable that people needs to see and need to read. And
just to walk you back there, you're studying Black history and culture. Do you mean like in Ireland or just as the wider platform globally?
Globally and in Ireland, and I come from Brazil, so we do a lot of Brazilian research as well, because Brazilian situation is quite similar, well, very similar to the American situation. So
it would, wouldn't it? Because it would have been a colony as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Viewers, I don't know if you listened to Joe Duffy, but I was having my leaves here last Friday, and my leaves and 2 tomatoes. And after my job, and suddenly I hear Marco on the wireless on Joe Duffy, and my heart broke, Marco, I have to say, because I've known you over 10 years,
yes,
I suppose, and you were saying stuff about your life in Ireland that I had no clue about. I thought you told me everything. I thought I was your best friend. And you said something, and it really broke my heart in a way, because then I started questioning myself. Well, I suppose, you should always be questioning yourself, but you were saying something about people touching your hair, and I was there thinking, sure, I'm always taking the piss out of his hair. Jesus, have I been abusive to Marco? Have I been abusive to have I been a racist? And I started asking myself these questions. And then I said, Jesus. And then you were telling viewers about people questioning your command of English.
Yes.
And I'm thinking, sure, I've done that. Now, viewers, not the way Marco was describing. I would be saying to Marco that he has a better command of English than I do, or most of us do. And he understands irony far better than most people. And, you know, when it comes to sort of even business savvy and marketing and stuff like that, he's way ahead of most people that I know anyway. And I was questioning myself, and then I was wondering why you never said this to me before. And then I thought, oh gosh, maybe he just sees me as a customer, and he, you know, the customer's always right. I think, oh my God, I had no idea. And I just wonder, is it that you've just adapted, or
Absolutely.
what the fuck, Marco?
This is what usually happens. You know, you end up getting used to, because it's constant, it's repetitive, and then you're like, well, will I get into this argue now, or will I just let it go? And then most of the time, I just let it go. But I can also see there's a very fine line there, because there's you know, because when you know someone as well as we know each other, it's completely different than when you are out in a club, and then somebody just out of nowhere just comes and touches your hair, and just for the sake of it, you know what I mean?
But is it like a novelty, like they've never seen her, or, you know, I mean,
yes.
You are a very, very attractive man, you know what
Thanks.
I mean? And you do take care of yourself, and he invests a lot in himself as well, by the way, viewers, but that's not my story to tell. But is it just, what is it, like, it is racist that you feel that you're being treated differently to everybody else?
It's not just being treated differently. I would say being objectified is the case here, because if it's back in history, you know, colonizers would go down to Africa and just steal people, just get people, make them their slaves, and put them into human zoos here for people to see the color of their skin, hair type, and this thing. But it's so common, and nowadays the excuse is just like, oh, I just wanted to feel your hair. But this idea is still in our DNA, you know. It's still there, this idea of objectifying a different human, or
I think you've explained that beautifully, actually. Using the objectifying. I want to apologize to you as well for another thing, Marco, because you're looking at my hair and you're looking at Neil's hair, and like you nose both, and I like, viewers, this is the equivalent of Marco looking at the state of us. This is the equivalent of nails down a blackboard for Marco. So it's a very uncomfortable situation for him. But Marco, how did the whole thing with getting on the Joe Duffy show start? I mean, are you just you know, on their die list? Are you in all the producers' address books and stuff like that?
Well, I hope I am. But I,
you know, at London Fashion Week and all.
Yes,
this.
I've got my contacts, you know. But I know some of the producers there, and then they just asked me, would you like to talk on it? And I was like, yes, I would like to talk it. The only time I heard about the show was before the show, and I didn't know what it was, and what I was getting myself into. But I suppose now, whatever platform I have, and I can express myself and bring more awareness towards my community, and especially the Black Lives Matter movement, I'll be happy to do it. So I was just approached by one of them, and then was it just the show that it was, because it was very emotional as well, because you had Trey, which is
that poor little boy, Jesus.
He sent a letter asking people to stop being racist, you know, and he suffered exactly the same thing. People coming to him and then just wanted to touch his hair or touch his skin, and having this comment as he's just a pet or something, you know, because it is. I even told on the show, because if you do this with anyone, depending on where you are, you're even arrested, you know. I don't go to, I do hair and I do makeup. I don't go to anyone's hair and face and say, oh, let me touch it because I just want to, you know, this is beautiful. You know,
like it was an eye-opener for me now. So, and I don't know whether I took it personally because you never said stuff like this to me before.
No,
but
don't.
Then sure, listen, lads, there's no better man to stand up for himself and, you know, and put himself out there than our good friend Marco Diaz. Derek there is he's either been thrown out of the restaurant he was in because he was showing off that they're allowed to go out and, you know, have a pint and a pizza. And Derek is a school teacher by profession. So it'd be interesting, Derek, if you don't mind, if you can fill us in on, like, in the classroom, was there, you know, were kids nasty to each other the way Marco is explaining, and that other little boy that was on the Joe Joffrey with him, his name was Trey. Turn on your mic there. Or well, like, Neil, do you want to hop in there quickly while he's trying to pull into the lay-by?
Derek's on mute there. Marco, if I could ask you, because one of the things that certainly emerged from the recent Black Lives Matter movement was a huge emphasis on white people to listen and to research and to try and get a better understanding of, you know, of what's involved and what's going on. And one of the things that I'm noticing is there's a huge disconnect. This is just my own perception. There's a huge disconnect in not just Ireland, but Europe, because what the added issue in the US obviously is the police brutality, which is what hits the headlines. But we have, you know, documented research that shows a level of racism in Europe, and Ireland's no different. In fact, I saw a report that showed Ireland was second. There was of some particular study, we were second on the list in Europe in terms of reports of racist incidents in Europe. And that actually surprised me as a report, because there is this thing about Ireland, the Céad Míle Fáilte, and, you know, because of what we went through under British oppression and colonization, that, you know, we understand racism more, which clearly we don't, because at the end of the day, Irish people were always white. But I'm just wondering, in terms of what, you know, Black people have experienced in Ireland, and, you know, it changing, dealing with the growing threat of racism in Europe. Where should it start? Should we be re-looking at how we're educating children from a younger age? Should we be seeing more activism in Ireland to deal with it now, rather than, you know, the trigger point here obviously was Black Lives Matter, but clearly this is something that's been around a very long time. So what's your kind of views on that? I know there's a lot of question in there.
Yeah, no, but it's actually a great point that you brought up, because I think as individuals, we have to, admit that there is a problem there, because I think most people think, oh, the problem isn't there. So, and why I say that, because we live in a racist system. You know, it's been created. It's not our fault, but it will be our fault if we will continue to repeat this system. You know, if we don't stop and think, because it's historical as well. You know, and then when Irish people tell me, well, but I'm not racist, but I'm like, well, you were born in a racist society, and all that you've been doing is assimilation, you know, because you can't have the same empathy, because everything you've learned was white man colonizing, civilizing places, you know, because this is what they literature says, because they have this romantic idea of making it into, oh, we were gods and we saved these people, and they were nothing, and even religious as well, you know. So there's a lot of points. I think going back to the point that a problem exists, then we have to see history, and then when we see history, then we can change and teach our kids. So, because otherwise I don't see, because we could start from our kids now, but then a lot of people wouldn't just admit that the problem is still there, and then just think is, oh, this is just a trend, or this is just something that it starts now, because it's not. It's been there forever, and that's why things are where we are now.
Yeah, but actually, Grania said something to me this evening. She said she's only realised since in the last few weeks that she has never had a non-white teacher. Oh, wow. She's going into 5th year now, and she's been in she between creches, after schools, primary school, 2 different primary schools, because she went to another school for 6th class. Mm-hmm. And she's been in 1 secondary school up to this year. She's going to another secondary school in September. And she's just saying she's only ever had white teachers. And now that I think about it, it was only ever white swimming coaches, it's like she's learning to swim, or her music teachers have all been white, and even sailing, everything. And you know, maybe that's a way of introducing people certain to be more, to recognize, I suppose, color as just not a thing, but a part of our planet, I suppose, and our human existence.
Yeah, absolutely. Because then it comes representation, you know, because we have we're visual, we're there, you know. You have your celebrities, you have your sport players and this, but you don't have Black people in places of power, you know. You don't see as many in the government, you don't see many teachers, you don't see many university professors and this thing, because it's easier when it comes to entertainment business. We're all there. We're just it's very, even the idea is very racist, you know, because we are just here to entertain, and then
that sort of
is,
sorry, Marco, but that sort of lends to your thing about the novelty then, that Black people in our kids' lives are sports stars and celebrities and you know, gosh,
they're not teachers, they're not even policemen, you know, here in Ireland. Because I remember I think it was last year that the first non-Irish or that hasn't come from an Irish family Gardaí was admitted or I don't know, passed the test or whatever. So
maybe we just have to change our norms now. Our new norm is Rex saying, you know, like, you know, the childminders don't have to be white. You know, our teachers, our Irish teachers don't have to be, you know, freckled and stuff like that. Yeah. But these are all things, like, I've known you so long, and I've been a cooperative person all my life. And it just, these things are coming now. I suppose because we're talking about it now. You know, it's I don't know whether I should be ashamed of not saying or speaking up, because I've just lived my way of life all, you know. I don't know. It's maybe I better put a poster up in the house, Black Lives Matter.
Yes, you should do that, and then you shouldn't be.
Well, you see, this is crumbling. So I mean, the most famous Black man ever is from here, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but this is the thing as well, and not beating up yourself as well, because we're all in this process of evolution. You know, we're now awakening and seeing reality in a different way, because now we have more time. Maybe if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, and if George Floyd's video of his death was out, it wouldn't be as viral. We never know, you know. Maybe because we are more in ourselves, and we are in isolation, then we are seeing things different, because this happens constantly in the States, in Brazil, in many other countries, you know. But
Jesus, I hate to hear that. That's that's incredibly sad. But in one way, I'm glad it's out. Whether it's because there was a vacuum with the lockdown and the pandemic. One thing I'm very disappointed with, but I suppose it's inevitable given the sort of polarized country America is now, is that the way they're remarking on his police record, as if that's a reason. And I would say to anyone who thinks that that's an argument you're entitled to make, is that if the man had a police record, and if he was known, as what we'd say here, known to Gardaí, okay, if the arresting officers knew all that, that's every reason the arrest should have been on the up and up. That every box should have been ticked. There should have been absolutely nothing out of place with the arrest. You know, I mean, they even, you know, it's a terrible tragedy, but if the arrest even got to court, you know, George Floyd had survived the assault, it would have been thrown out. They'd never have got a conviction for whatever it was that he was, it was attempting, using fraudulent note or something. You know, I mean, they had every reason for the arrest to be absolutely ironclad, perfect, not a hair out of place, every I dotted and every T crossed. So introducing his criminal record, or the fact that he was known to the police, makes a crime even worse.
Yeah.
It questions the ability of the police force. It
Mm-hmm.
puts far more shade on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Than,
Absolutely.
now, so if anyone wants to have that one out with me, here, bring it on. But that's where I am.
I'm with you. Yeah, absolutely. Because it shouldn't, you know, it shouldn't matter. You shouldn't kill people just for the sake of it. Because the problem as well is the way that the system is, and the way that the system doesn't, the way that the system allow and it gives this privilege to especially the police in the States to just erase people at in any way. They just decide to erase it and then do it. It's the same with Brazil, you know. And in Brazil is even crazy, because Brazil, we have the police brutality is one of the highest in Brazil, but also it's where police dies the most in Brazil, and they commit more suicide as well, policemen in Brazil. That's the statistics. So it's even crazy, you know, because they're not prepared to be on that position psychologically, and then, you know, you have all this system that goes after it that is just insane.
Derek's there back in his house there.
Yeah,
Now, did you enjoy lunch?
I'm back in. My phone overheated, so that's why I dropped out. It's like 34 degrees here or something, so it was a silly idea to try to do it outside.
You know,
can I just say,
you're a very mean man, Derek, because you're showing off being out and about, having your drink and your glass of wine and your pizza slice, and now you're tormenting us with the weather. We had hailstones here last night. The heating has been on in this house today.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh
so,
no.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there.
Can I just say what an absolute pleasure it is to hear Marco talk, and it's so upsetting to hear him describe his story. And really, part of me wants to stop talking now and just let him continue to talk, because I don't feel that I have a right nearly to discuss this, because I've no clue what it's like. I've no clue what it is to have his experience. And I think a lot of us as white people, probably especially as a white man, need to shut up and listen and learn from Marco's experience and try to do better. You asked me, Vanessa. No, I've said that, and then I continue to talk, right? So that's typical of like a white privilege, right? I've acknowledged that I should get out of the conversation and listen, and yet I continue to talk. But you asked me a question, Vanessa, when I was in the car about my experience as a teacher in school. And if you had asked me that question 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I would have said to you, I think we've done a pretty good job. I think in the school I was in, our black students mixed in with the white kids. There was kids from Lithuania, there was kids from Nigeria originally, and everyone seemed to get on. And it was I would have said, a happy experience for everybody, all concerned. With the benefit of hindsight and looking back, I'm sure there must have been some racism, maybe a lot of racism. Maybe it was very subtle, or maybe I was blind, and maybe I just didn't see. As a teacher, there's two things I really, really hate. And one was somebody telling me lies. If you lie to me, that breaks trust. And the other thing that I was really strong on was bullying. And I thought that I dealt really, really well with bullying anytime I came across it. And I used to look out for bullying. But I'm wondering back, did I miss racism that I wasn't even aware that it was happening? So I have a lot of soul searching to do, a lot of questioning to do. I hope not, but I wouldn't be. I can't be naive enough to say that. I would have always thought of myself as being like colorblind. You know, I would have said, I don't see color. I judge people by their character. But then I was teaching in the school over here in the East Bay, which was, there was no white kids in the school, lots of people of color. Very few black kids, but people of color from the Philippines or from other parts of Asia or Hispanic or Latin America, whatever. And they had all these motivation signs on the wall. And one of the signs on the wall said, if somebody tells you they don't see color, they are a liar. And I was taken aback by this. I was quite disturbed. I thought, hang on a second, I don't see color. This sign, I felt like it was attacking me in some way. And then it dawned on me, the sign is dead right. When you see somebody, you know it's whether they're tall or small, or if they're good looking or not good looking, or if they're fat or thin. And to say that you don't see a color is like you're cutting yourself. Everybody sees color. Yeah, the same way you see whether somebody has blue eyes or green eyes. I had an experience what it means to be white, because I never felt like a white man. But I walked into one school, and one of the kids, I was a substitute teacher, so I was trying to get to know the kids. I was just chatting, and one of the kids was saying to me how she loved being in the school that we were in, because she said because everybody has dark eyes and dark hair. And I looked around the room. There was 36 kids in the class, teenagers. And for the first time in my life, I felt what it was to be white. I was the only person in there with blue eyes. I was the only person who had fair hair, who had white skin. And I'd never experienced whiteness before. Does that make any sense?
I think so.
I was in a position of authority. I wasn't being discriminated against. It wasn't racism or anything like that. I'm not saying that. I'm saying I don't walk around every day thinking I'm a white person, right? I just walk around being me. I never have to think I'm white. That's part of my privilege, right? I get to walk around being white, and without having to think about it. That was the first time I realized I'm white. I have blue eyes. And everybody else here is different. I'm different to everybody here. Right? So that was a strange experience for me. And I suppose what that means, or what look at it. I'm not saying, please don't take me wrong. I'm not saying, oh, I know what it's like to be discriminated against, because it wasn't. I was the position of authority, but I felt what it was like to be different.
Like an outsider, Derek.
Like an outsider. Like the only way I can describe it is I became aware of my whiteness. I never felt that. I never had to think about that before.
Yeah.
Right. So like as I said, I've already spoken too long. I need to let Marco speak. I have a lot of learning to do, but it's really another day. A student, two girls came up to me and was like, "Oh my God, I love your eyes." Right? I was like, "Oh, thanks very much." But they were like amazed to see blue eyes. It was just like, because everybody else had dark eyes. But I think in Ireland we love a pair of brown eyes. Like Shane McGowan has a song, "A Pair of Brown Eyes." We love, like, brown eyes are attractive and exotic to us in Ireland. But these girls were commenting on my blue eyes. I think they gave me a nice compliment to the teenage girls, as they do. But so as I say, that's I'd say I love hearing Marco's story. I hate hearing some of the things he's describing and what he's been through. I think it's It's horrific. But I think I need to just stop now.
Yeah. Listen, don't worry about Marco. He has hundreds of stories. Hundreds.
Yeah.
Marco, just is there any more protests planned? I know there's the shadow of coronavirus over all of this, but is there any more protest plans, or is there any actions or activities or groups that people can get involved with or read more about what's going on?
As far as I know, not at the moment. There's nothing. But the MASI, the movement of asylum seekers in Ireland, it's one to follow and merge as well the migrants and ethnic minorities as well in Ireland would be nice, because they are discussing quite a lot, and also Black Pride Ireland. And they're also discussing a lot about the situation now, and also what it needs to be changed in Ireland as well, because the direct provision as well is something that has been brought up here in Ireland with it. The fact that refugees are literally locked up in this small rooms, and the
asylum seekers.
Yeah, the asylum seekers, and the way that they're treated, and they're not introduced to society, and so it started this conversation as well, which is also great, you know. So,
but I think we probably going to start to see the end of direct provision now, and that I think the two, it was supposed to, it was a perfect storm with the transfer of those asylum seekers from Dublin to Kerry to Carsiveen, and then the Black Lives Matter movement taken over. You know, maybe how it became so powerful so fast is that it should have happened 50 years ago.
yes.
I mean, Bobby Kennedy's dead over 50 years. Do you know what I mean? In one way, I suppose we have to say maybe we've regressed as a society. You were talking, Derek, there about being in a room and feeling like an outside, being the odd one out. I was at an event with the credit union movement. We would have this global event, and they come from all over. There's credit unions everywhere, and I would be at a function or in a hall, and it literally the entire spectrum of skin color is there, and walks of life, and you know, all ages. And Brazil actually have one of the most powerful credit union movements in the world. They would have credit unions that go in the billions, right down to a small collective in the forest, in one of the forests, you know, that are totally off grid. And they have a rule actually in Brazil that any event or function the credit union goes to, half the delegation have to be 35 or under, and they have a fantastic age profile at everything they go to. I'm going off the point there, sorry folks, but when I go to these, I actually don't feel I'm white at all. I just feel Irish.
I wonder if Vanessa would maybe the experience I had, I wonder would it be similar to a woman's feeling going into a conference that she's the only woman.
Oh yeah.
I wonder is that same experience where like a woman walks in and there's 30 men in the room and she's the only female. I wonder, is that a similar?
Yeah, well, I can speak to that because I worked in a very male environment for a long time, and yeah, I suppose it might. I hope it didn't. It wasn't like that, but you see, I've never agreed with gender quotas, and I have never kind of really got behind affirmative action either, and maybe that was me just being stubborn from a long ways off. I suppose, you know, I'm in my 50s now, so I think maybe I've gotten used to things that I don't notice, you know, and maybe I should pay more attention now. Yeah, maybe it did. Maybe that's how you felt, but I have gotten used to it as well, and I make no apologies for who I am either, you know, and I don't make excuses either. I think a lot of it reminds me of a conversation we had back during the referendum to remove the 8th Amendment. And I remember kind of canvassing and making pitches on the show for undecided voters about, you know, don't think you know how to walk in another girl's shoes, because you don't. And I'd like to think now that I would never know what it is like to walk in Marco's shoes. Well, I know he wears black runners all the time, you know, but do you know what I mean? I really don't want to say I'm going to do it for a day, or no one feels it. I don't think we could ever be honest about that. I think that's kind of lip service, maybe tokenism as well. You know, I don't know what the answer is that's going to make this right. But what I do know is that I think we should stand up for everybody. If you see something on the street, interfere. You know, if you know something in the workplace that doesn't smell right or look right, the chances are it doesn't. If you have the personality and the mindset that has noticed something isn't quite as fair or as equal or as honest, or is right, then you know your instincts are right. So just go with it, you know. And I think I would be more inclined to interfere now if I thought, well, actually I would anyway. I wouldn't keep me trapped shut anyway, you know. But I think the whole thing, Derek and Neil as well, is that when Marco was on the radio the other day, and I was hearing all this, and I kind of took it personally, thinking, why didn't you tell me this? You know, and it was all coming out, and then I'm thinking, just what have I not seen around myself all this time? You know.
Yeah, that's why I think listening is so important. Like we have to listen to people and have to listen to their experiences, and we have to try and learn and be honest. And I think that's the starting point. And then I'd like to hear Marcos telling us how he would like us to proceed, what he thinks would help. And I think, Vanessa, you're right. Definitely interfere, stand up, be counted. But I'd say I'd love to hear Marco's suggestions of what he would like to see from fellow Irishmen and women.
Yeah, I agree with you as well, Derek. And I think listening, well, acknowledging listening, learning and changing, it's very important, you know. And I definitely agree with Vanessa as well. If you see something, if you come across anything, we should speak up. We should talk and point things as well, you know. It's the same with even jobs, you know. If you walk into a company and you don't see, you know, Black people of color, you don't see representation there. People should be asking questions to themselves. Why is it not happening? But we have to acknowledge, we cannot forget that we live in a system that makes us be blind. So this is white privilege, okay? Walking into a place and not being looked at, and then you can just walk and you don't even notice that you're white. But every time that I have to go outside, I have to think, am I dressing the way that I won't be marginalized outside? Is my hair okay? Is my tone of voice okay? It's my you know, if I go to this shop, how I'm going to be looked at, or if I talk with this person, or if I go to this club. It's always, you know, you always have this thoughts, and since a very young age, because this is what we learned when we were growing up. You can't act this way because they'll think you're a criminal, and then the police might arrest you, police might shoot you, or this might happen. For many times here in Ireland, here in Dublin, I walk into shops and I had the security following me. And it's the most insane is it's usually a Black person that follows. And I'm like, I don't understand. But I also understand the fact that this person lives and in this system that generates all this, you know, generates people to look at themselves before they go out, and also follow people in and shop.
Well, we do know racial profiling has never worked.
Yes.
It has never been proved accurate, or, you know, has never proved what it set out, what it promised it would, or what the people that pushed it through. The only thing I would say there, when Mark, you were saying about seeing more Black people, you know, in positions, senior positions in work or in political positions, let me tell you something, right? When they introduced the quotas here, gender quota, you know, for politicians, you know, the political parties had to have so many women candidates, or boards now, state boards have to have so many women candidates. I'll be honest with you, it hasn't delivered. It has, it has brought maybe women, it's got women elected and it's got women, but that doesn't necessarily mean we're getting the right candidates. And, you know, maybe some affirmative action will, if it introduces more equality, well, then I'm for it. But, you know, there'll be a lot of tokenism as well. You know, don't assume just because there's a Black person appointed to the Arts Council, or, you know, or a person of colour that's been, you know, appointed to an impressive board, that everything is going to change. It's not. And it's the same in your constituency. If you elected, I mean, you have, Hazel Cho is one of your councillors there. You know, and that she got that. She won that seat fair and square with a massive majority. You know, so like I would be more inclined to, I recognize now what you're saying is, because I don't notice I'm white, it's privilege. But at the same time, when I did my leaving cert, all the fellas that did their leaving cert the same day I did, had far more rights than I had. So again, I'm not making an excuse, I'm not making it about me, but, you know, I think Ireland is still adjusting to a lot of things. And maybe affirmative action is the way to go, but as long as it brings about equality, then I'm all for it.
Yeah. The world is, you know, the world is going to all this, not only Ireland, you know, but what I believe that will happen, having more representation out there, is the change, you know. It's the end of racism, because then we're equal, because we're not equal yet, you know. We're far from equal, you know, of being equal in race, in gender, and in many other things, you know. We could spend minutes just talking about it.
I mean, equality doesn't necessarily mean fair. I mean, it's about, you know, equity, really, making sure the same opportunities and that are provided. Marco, you, when the salons reopened, do you want to give a little plug for where people can find you?
Well, I'm a salon owner in the studio in Ranelagh. But this, I wanted to make sure that I say that this is not the reality of every Black person in Ireland, okay? We have to point this out, because I've been working very hard for the past 13 years that I'm here in Ireland, and I'm based in Ranelagh. And yeah, we're just waiting the government to put the thumbs up and say we can get back to work, and then we can finally just leave our places, because I'm tired of this thing behind me. Just many trips around.
Can I just plug something as well there? A while ago, the late Billy Keane wrote a 3-piece on democracy, and the final piece remarked about the proclamation of independence and the signatories to it. And I did it basically was saying that if they had known then what Ireland was going to be like today, you know, with an openly gay Taoiseach, a woman's right to choose was available, but in addition to that, a termination was now available under free maternity care as part of the maternity services in the Republic. Would they still sign it? And I have this belief that I have to believe they would, because they did not die as patriots for a particular Irish DNA or a particular skin pigment. They died as patriots so we would all be equal, and that equality would be something that was guaranteed in the future of the country. the state hadn't been formed then, but I have to believe that they would have still signed it back in 1916 if they knew what Ireland was going to be like today, because it was about equality, justice, and opportunity for all of us. It wasn't about a particular DNA or skin pigment. So I still believe that. I firmly believe that, and that's what I live. That's what I try and live to every day. To be honest with you, I suppose being a person in the cooperative way, I always know where I am on anything. But I have to believe that. So anyone who goes through all this patriotism and the true patriots, I really do believe our patriots then would have still signed that document if they'd known what Ireland was going to be like today. And I have to believe that.
On that note, I wanted to. Sorry, Marco, are you going to say something?
No. Beautifully said, Vanessa. Yeah,
Thank you, honey.
So
We
I
talk
wanted
to the white privileged man behind me now.
Before we get to him, I wanted to change topic for a moment. Derek, we're seeing in the news today in relation to coronavirus and the US that some states are experiencing a second wave. I would have thought that you have to come out of a first wave to experience a second wave. How are things looking? Well, first of all, in California, which is supposed to be one of the better states, and then compare that with the rest of the country.
Well, that was my intention today, was to do an outside broadcast and show you the thing opening up. I was able to have a spot of lunch there. The little outside bar was full, and people were having a good time. My wife went and got her hair done yesterday, so she was absolutely delighted to be able to get her hair done. Swimming, we're involved in a swimming club, and on Monday, June 15th, we've booked a slot where we have 45 minutes where we're able to go to the pool. So golf is flying. That golf is back to normal, and that gives you that things are okay. People are starting to organize play dates with the kids. Leah's got to see some of her friends. So there's this sense of normalcy coming back. I think with all the protests, that has made people relax a little bit. There's some news that asymptomatic people aren't actually spreading the disease. If that's true, that's really, really good news, because then it's only people with symptoms, and we'll be able to isolate those people easier. So there's a lot to be positive. However, it is starting to blow up in lots of states, and I think we're starting to see from Memorial Day, from Mother's Day, for the sort of public holidays that we've had over the last 4 weeks or so. I think we're starting to see the consequences of not social distancing and not wearing masks, and there's a big danger that second wave is going to come. So
can I just ask you on that, Derek? Sorry to interrupt you. I just ask you on that because where your family's concern is, because if your wife went to, I don't know if you've shared the name before, so I won't say names, but if she's gone and got her hair done yesterday, and obviously I know you were out for the show to kind of show us what was open, but you're in a restaurant, where's you and the family's head at in terms of risk, concern, or is it a case of, from a psychological perspective, because the thoughts from the top down are we can reopen, everything's gone back to normal, that it's hard to move away from that mindset as a citizen or as a resident?
We don't have any vulnerable people that we know over here, so I think we can nearly afford to be a little bit more selfish, because we don't have to consider people who have underlying conditions, elderly people. So there probably is a selfishness that, like, I'm done with this. Let me go back to normal. But then intellectually your head kicks in and you say, no, we can't do this. Like we are meticulous about our hand washing. We're meticulous about wearing our masks when we go anywhere in public. But like, we are itching to get back to normal and to be able to socialize. Some friends are talking about maybe going for dinner on Saturday night.
I'd love that.
And like, it's hard to turn it down. The problem is we won't be able to get a babysitter, because that's not fair to ask somebody to take that risk. So it might be a case that one of us, Pam's after getting her hair done, so she might want to go in because her hair is done, and I'll stay at home and babysit. But it's like, there's definitely a sense, Neil, of like, let's go, let's do this, even though the head says
We're losing you a little bit there.
Big risk. That's contradictory. I know what I'm saying is contradictory. I'm on the one hand I'm saying I wanted to go back, on the other hand I'm saying it's risky. But I think when the authorities give you the go ahead, you feel like I'm able to push these boundaries. Then I'm able. If the authorities are saying,
to rely on it, there.
Yeah,
yes.
I think that's what I'm getting at, because certainly from my friends in America and my networks there, even the most conservative among them on the issue, we do seem to align with our leaders. And even though we know what the leadership is like at the US, there isn't a level of alignment. We do almost that kind of not sheep mentality, but herd mentality, in terms of, it's probably the wrong choice of words, and we're talking about viruses, but we do follow suit with the leadership in terms of what's been passed down and what's being handed down. Some of the comments there that you're saying, you have no idea what we've gone through here. So we're very sorry if you're in two minds about going out on Saturday night. At least you've got the choice. But what is interesting though here is that, in contrast to you, is while we have a stricter lockdown, the whole debate about face masks, it's very clear from the literature around us, from the WHO, we should be wearing face masks. And our man in town, Tony, regularly speaks about his emotional feelings about the lack of discipline with face masks here. Yet there's no mandate to. I don't think they can make it mandatory. I don't know the reason for it. Whereas other countries in Europe, certainly taking Spain, which I'll be more familiar with, there's an on-spot fine if you don't wear a mask. So we're in this
Neil,
position, yeah.
Sorry, I just saw, I think it was in Arizona, that two hairdressers in a salon both tested positive for coronavirus. They traced 168 possible people who could have been infected, and of the people they traced, 0 people that could have got the virus actually got the virus. And they put it down to the 2 people who were wearing masks in the hair salon. But that's a remarkable good news story, that that 0 out of the people, I think out of 168 people, I think they were able to contact 60, I think, and it was 0 out of 60 who would have been expected to maybe catch the disease, didn't. Which I'd say that because of the masks.
Well, I think we're all adjusted now. Well, you see, the Irish have a bad history of masks, balaclavas. I can understand why there's like a reluctance here. We mightn't admit to it, but certainly I'm a child of the 80s and 70s, so I can visualize it so easily. But I'm all kitted out here for masks. I have all the masks, and I can see myself wearing a mask going into office buildings and close, shops that are that there's more people in, or if I'm on the bus or something, I could see, or if I'm in a taxi, and maybe when I get my hair done, when that opens up, I'd have to wear a mask and stuff like that, I think it's an adjustment for all of us. We just have to get used to it. Like, these are all new manners we have to start getting used to. There's certain societies where they always wore masks if somebody had a cold. So we just this is all part of getting used to things.
Well, I think sorry, Derek.
I think you'd be a social pariah here if you walked into a Safeway or a Target without wearing a mask. Certainly in our area, it's just like I'd say it's 99.9% compliance.
Yeah, but I think we'll just get used to it. Like you go to this, if you go to the pictures or to the theatre now, I think everyone will be wearing masks and they'll be careful, you know. And we just have to get used to it. It's an adjustment. We got used to lockdown. We got used to social distancing. We'll get used to this as well. We just have to get over it.
It would be great to see it being made more mandatory. Maybe if it can't be made mandatory in law, that certainly store policies. I know in public transport you have to wear them. Why can't we do that in stores? I believe, well, with the airlines it's mandatory. I'm sure the airport will be the same. So perhaps that's the way to go. Speaking of travel, there's something I've noticed that hasn't really been covered in Irish media, because I've always a vested interest in getting on an airplane because I like to spend times on airplanes. What we're not hearing, we all know about the Irish quarantine and yada yada yada. But from an EU level, there's a lot of pressure being exerted by the Commission on nations to get the free movement of free movement of people up and running by the end of the month.
Is that what in Europe, Neil?
Well, I'm picking this up from European media and I'm translating it to English as best I can. But certainly from what I read in the Spanish news today, the Commission is putting pressure on governments. Spain, from a European perspective, is being quoted or is being flagged as one of the slowest to open their borders because they're flagging 1st of July. And I should point out that the EU doesn't include Ireland, even though our borders are technically open, because we have the quarantine in place. It doesn't include Ireland as somebody who currently is allowing the free movement of Europeans. But where things do get confusing is occasionally Schengen is referenced as opposed to the EU, and obviously we're not part of Schengen.
We're not Schengen.
But what is interesting is the European, I'm going to forget the name, but the European equivalent of the CDC or the WHO, the European Disease Center, I can't remember the exact name, is that they're saying they see no reason for borders not to be reopened in full by the 30th of June. And that also includes the UK and Sweden as part of that. Which I find is interesting. Now, like I say, it's getting coverage certainly in the Mediterranean countries where tourism is a big thing, but I'm not seeing it mentioned much in the Irish media. And I know when we talk about quarantines and closing of borders, it brings up a variety of views because we should have done it ages ago. There's no point in doing it now. But I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Yeah, but Neil, it's grand to be going off to Spain and Portugal, and we have to go to Luke before he goes off to get married, so we have to give him a send off. But just coming back and having to isolate for a fortnight. So as soon as, do you know what, lads? We don't know whether we're coming or going, but we know we'll all be wearing masks, and we're now anti-racist. We're not just non-racists anymore. We're anti-racist.
Yes, yes.
Now you see the fists there, right? I was going to say this, and then I said no, I won't. But now that you've put it up, there's two things about the whole protest, right, that don't sit right with me. One is that closed fist. I hate it as an expression. Do you know, the closed fist? I don't know. It just gives me. I just think it resonates with violence. I don't like it. The other thing is I won't be kneeling for anybody. Like I have a teenager, I'll kneel for her, and that's it. I won't be kneeling in front of anybody. So sorry, folks.
I hate to break it to you, Vanessa, but it's not about you. So
No, I know. But I saw when I was watching the thing they were getting. Remember, Johnny was on last week from the protest in New York, and they were shouting at the NYPD to kneel. And I think that was a very powerful statement if that happened. But then I was watching people on the street, watching the parade, watching the protests as the Black Lives, and they were kneeling. And it occurred to me then is that like they're all kneeling together. Or, yes. You know, there was something a bit condescending. I thought there was they had kids doing it and with the fist up. And I have to say, I don't like a closed fist as an expression.
This is
I
just your
don't-
whiteness talking. This is the system of racism talking. Because it's been more than 500 years of injustice, and if we don't
Yeah,
get
but you see, I came from the capital punishment. There was still capital punishment when I was at school. So when you had your head boxed off you by a teacher, and I wasn't just a clatter, they would batter us, drag us by the hair. Absolutely. I've seen stuff that people wouldn't believe.
I
But
think
you
the idea
wouldn't
of
be
the closed
killed,
fist.
But
You
I think the
wouldn't be
idea that-
killed.
I think the idea of the closed fist is like to smash the system. Whether I know like a lot of the socialist parties will have it because they want to smash the economic system, and the black fist is to try and smash the
yeah,
inherently
no,
racist system. So I think it's an acceptable symbol, because it's like there needs to be this drastic change. Like the system is broken.
Yeah, I suppose it's part of the affirmative
Whether
action
it's
now. We're just going to
the
have
economic.
to row in behind it. I've got bad knees, though. It's from all those years of saying the stations.
Sorry, Derek, in case you're not aware, your connection is jumping in and out, so we get a delay, which is why you maybe feel like you're being interrupted sometimes, but just so you're aware. This is live,
I'm sorry
folks.
about that.
Anything can
That's
and does
live.
happen.
Oh, we're not doing too bad tonight. Pretty steady.
Relative.
You're in America there, Derek. Do you recognize the man behind me?
I can't really see it.
Oh.
Is it Schwarzenegger?
No.
I can't make it out either.
This is you probably wouldn't know. He's his job title is he's the Secretary of State to Iowa. He's Iowa's Secretary of State. Now, when I heard the job title, I thought it was something like a county manager or a town clerk, but it's actually not. The job is actually, he's the chief returning officer for the entire state of Iowa. And his name is Paul Pat, or Pate. It's spelled Pate, but it's P-A-T-E. And he's a Republican. And he took the initiative. He's effectively the returning officer. And so he's in charge of what we would call the electoral register. So he took the initiative back a month or so ago, and he sent out a postal ballot to every person registered to vote in the whole state of Iowa. And so there was a huge turnout with the postal ballot in the primaries. And one constituency or one area, I don't know what they call them there, the different electoral areas or wards, there was 85% turnout, first time ever, because of this postal ballot. And he's a registered Republican. And now the state Senate in Iowa have entered a 30-page amendment to the act to stop him from issuing postal ballots for fear the postal ballot is going to turn the state blue.
Yeah.
And I wanted to put it up there because I thought it was an ingenious idea, and it was also a demonstration. You see, it fed to my theory as well that I think the Republican Party is going to split. And for me, the answer is in equality and democracy and justice. And I just thought it was an incredible initiative to do. This was something he could do in his job. And he sent every voter in Iowa a postal ballot, and they responded. And of course, the Republican Party, I don't know if people are aware of this, but they do better in jurisdictions and states where there's voter suppression, or where there's vigorous voting laws that you have to have an ID, and the ID has to be within 6 months of voting, or you have to have been registered at this address for 6 years and stuff like that. Wherever there's restrictive voting,
Vanessa,
sort of suppression.
Vanessa, do you see what happened in Georgia? Georgia, there was chaos. They had a primary. People were queuing for 7 hours. They closed all the voting areas where Black people lived were shut down, and there was one station opened. People had to queue for 7 and 8 hours. Then the voting machines didn't work. The voting machines that Ivanka Trump has a patent on for some reason. You can't make this up.
Jobs for the boys, lads.
But what was really shocking was, one lady was frustrated. She drove to a white neighborhood, and people were going in and out it taking them 3 minutes to vote, 5 minutes to vote. There was the white areas, the voting worked perfectly well in Georgia. The black areas, it was a deliberate attempt at voter suppression. And Trump is setting this up that he's softening up voter fraud. He's been banging on about it for a year.
Well, he's quoted on this case, Derek.
If the election goes again.
Sorry, who's going there?
Let Derek finish his point.
He is setting this up that if he doesn't win the election, that he's going to cast doubts on it. He's going to say that it was rigged, and he's not going to go easily. And just the last thing I wanted to say was, you talk about the Republican Party. I actually wrote a blog piece about ordinary, decent Republicans. It's on the irishguy.org website. And it just tried to explain, like, who are these? Are there any such thing as ordinary, decent Republicans? But I just given a little plug there. You might be interested in having a read of it.
I read it today. Just to follow up on this guy with his party colleagues that are actually in the Iowa Senate, they're trying to stop they're trying to change the law now for postal ballots, and that people actually have to request a postal ballot before he's allowed to send them one. But like, as I said earlier, like, the Republicans have always done better in elections where there is suppression, but there is various suppression. So Trump anyway got wind of this in Iowa, and he said it's mail-in voting facilitates widespread fraud. There is no way, zero, as in, like, he had zero in capital letters, that mail-in ballots will be anything less than substantially fraudulent. Mailboxes will be robbed, ballots will be forged, and even illegally printed out and fraudulently signed, is what Trump tweeted. Okay, so the Washington Post did their homework, and what they did was with the help of the nonprofit Electronic Registration Information Center, they found that there was 372 possible cases of double voting or voting on behalf of deceased people out of 14.6 million votes cast by mail in the 2016 and the 2018 general election, or 0.0025%. Now, when it comes to casting the ballots of deceased voters, there's plenty of a constituency around here will have a record of that, you know. And just in case people thought the Washington Post might have a bias against Trump and his attitude to mail ballots, they've actually gone and found an organization called the Heritage Foundation that collects voting data, and it's right-wing funded, and their data has actually produced that there was 204 incidents of potential absentee ballot fraud in 20 years. And during that 20-year span, right, there was 250 million ballots cast, and they found 204 out of that 250 million ballots. So it's basically 1/6 of a millionth of 1% was the risk of fraud with postal ballots. So whether he gets his way now or not, I don't know. But I thought I wanted to introduce them that, as you said, ordinary, decent Republicans. And there would be a lot of Irish connection now in the Republican Party, where it would have been traditionally the Democratic Party Irish Americans would have been attracted to, because obviously Reagan attracted a lot of paddies, or first and second and third generation paddies, into the Republican Party. But this was a good story, and it was about democracy, and it was about access to vote. So that's our friend, Mr. Pat, or Pate, in Iowa.
On that note.
On that note.
So, given we're still in lockdown, Vanessa, and I know you're a big fan of what's on the box. What's on the movie streams.
Did you watch the show I was telling you about?
I didn't. Derek may have. I don't know if Mark has seen it.
Which one?
The Selling Sunset. Oh, Marco would love it. Marco would love it. The Botox, the boobs, the glamour, the hair extensions.
That should be in a different show, Vanessa.
I did watch some, but not all of the Jeremy Epstein documentary on Netflix.
I saw that as well. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Hillary Clinton one.
I had to turn off just from a how do you say this without sounding weird? I didn't find it. I got very bored of it, not because of what happened, but because I felt from a storytelling perspective, it was a lot of interviews with the survivors, which became a repetitive thing, certainly in the first episode. So I got some of the way through the second one. I had to switch off. If you're familiar with the story, there's nothing kind of new or shocking in it, but I know.
But again, Neil, I thought it was chilling to hear the voice of the victims and to give them their voice, and I was glued to it because of that. I thought it was like, it's a horrific story, and I think there's a lot more to come. There's a lot more that isn't divulged, you know.
But I think the fear is probably not as much as that should be because of his death. You know, what has been taken to the grave. Certainly, there's a lot implicated in the documentary when it does get to that piece. But I don't know if we'll ever know.
Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I would.
If you're already very familiar with the story, and I wouldn't. Just from purely sitting down to watch 3 episodes, I wouldn't. But if you're not familiar with it, and you want to get a sense of what it's all about, then yeah.
Right, but I tell you what, I started watching now, and I have to recommend it now. From the solemnity of the Epstein story is a Space Force with have you seen it?
Oh yes, I saw some of it. Yeah.
Oh, stop! Even the teenager was skitting laughing. To see the cast in it, just incredible cast, folks. It's called Space Force. It's literally about Trump has ordered the Air Force to put boots on the moon, so they've created this special force to get. And Steve Carell is he's the the highest ranking officer, and he plays the part of an Air Force colonel very well, doesn't he? I'm not going to say too much more about it other than to recommend it. It's very well shot, very well scripted, and the acting. And you can always see them improvising as well in it, Neil, so I think you'd like it.
I've heard very bad things about it. That's all I'll say. That's all I'll say. But
Marco had a great show. He put me on to ages ago. I thought it was funny too. That's Neil, sure. You never please Neil. Marco put me onto this show ages ago called, is it Pose, Marco?
Pose, yes.
But do you want to tell the lads about it? Because it opened my eyes to a scene I never knew existed.
Yeah, Pose, it's about a subculture and that started in New York and in the States about, well, it was a community of LGBTQI plus Black, Latino, and Asian, that they were outsiders, and they couldn't go to the white places in New York, and then they created their own balls. So the whole ballroom culture started at the late 70s, if I'm not wrong. So it's a very nice show to see the other perspective of how everything started, you know, of how even the Stonewall movement had started at the time, you know, because it was not only the LGBTQ I plus community wanting their rights, but also the Black, Latino, people of color as well wanted their own right in their own space at the time. So it's very interesting. Yeah, Pose is called. I think it's on Netflix already.
Yeah, there's a lovely family feel to it, because there was what Mark was saying about subculture, and they created their own ballroom scene. So it was more like a fashion show scene, like the catwalk, didn't they? And each of the houses competed with each other on the catwalk, you know. But the houses, now Marco, you can add to this. The houses, what I extracted were where young kids arrived on a bus from having been thrown out of their homes for being gay or for being effeminate or for being different, and they arrived on a bus from the back hills of nowhere, God knows where, and they would just go into this house where they would be minded and looked after and developed in their sexuality or in a healthy environment. And there was like a madam in each house, there was like a leader in each house that looked after everybody, and there was a lovely sense of community and value, actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
Value of family. And I've always believed family was 2 or more people looking after each other. It's not mammy, daddy, and 2.3 kids, the traditional sense. So I've always felt that. So I could actually see the network coming together into creating each of its own families. And I really appreciate it. So I was trying to put me onto it, and I never got a chance to. We were just too busy talking other shit.
I'm glad you liked it.
It was made for you to introduce it now to everybody. Pose. And so you know where all the voguing comes from now, you see.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that wasn't created by Madonna.
The lads invented it. You were nothing without the lads. Lady Gaga girl, you were nothing without these boys.
Absolutely not. Yeah. Even RuPaul's Drag Race, the reality show,
Isn't he lovely?
by the
Isn't he just an absolutely handsome man? And he's lovely. He's so elegant, and he's funny, and he's smart. And you just get the feeling he could turn his hand to anything. He could change a tire, or he could do your hair. God, he's.
Do you know, I'm noticing
so
a trend, Vanessa. I've noticed that, you know, you complimented Marco on his good looks, and now RuPaul. And I'm thinking, I've been on this show since the first episode, and I don't think I've ever had a compliment. So I'm obviously don't meet the high standards that you expect of the men of this world. I don't know, Derek, have you ever got a compliment? I know you're on a shorter period of time, so there's plenty of opportunity, but has she ever said on
from Vanessa?
No, I've always. That's Jesus, you're giving me a hard time now.
She only started slagging Carlo GA. That's.
You deserve that, though.
Now, like, you see that now, Marco. I have always said the Irish were indigenously racist anyway, because Cork people hate Meath people. Like, I'd live anywhere in the world except Meath, right? Well, Kerry people are referred to as animals, right? The Tipperary lads haven't a chance. Like Kilkenny lads are they're all inbred.
Oh my
you know,
God.
the missing link is in all their faces. Like
how do you politicize a entertainment slot? I don't know, Vanessa.
There's some great stuff breaking though on Netflix at the moment.
There's actually a lot of Black Lives Matters inspired films as well that a lot of the streamers are putting up as well. So it's a good time to catch up on that.
What do we think about all the TV shows and movies being pulled down now? Because there's like Gone with the Wind. Marco, what would you think about that? Gone with the Wind is coming down, but they're going to re-put it up with a documentary attached to it about the time, you know. What do you think? And what did I see today? Little Britain is coming down, and the Mighty Bosch is being pulled down. What do we think about all that?
Fawlty Towers has been pulled. The episode with the Germans, Don't Mention the War, has been pulled as well.
For saying don't mention the war.
Well, there's other racial comments in that episode as well, but that episode has been pulled as well.
What do you think of that, Marco?
necessary and sensible as well at the same time. And if we can review and revalue things, that what should be done at the moment, you know. And I'll plug something here as well. Becoming on Netflix as well. It's very nice. It's a Michelle Obama documentary. It's based on her book as well, so it shows a lot of her struggle as well, being the first Black woman doing everything.
First lady.
Yeah.
Well, the Hillary doc dropped as well. They're all coming out.
Well, stick to Michelle Obama.
I've made the point several times that it's really important that I stop talking and I listen to Marco and other people so that I can learn. And now nearly straight away, I want to sort of challenge him on the idea that pulling these programs is a good idea. So again, I'm a big contradiction, right? I'm saying I need to listen to what he's saying, and yet I'm going, what if we are pulling Gone with the Wind? Just like, how is that going to, like, there's a historical context there that people can learn about as well, you know. Like,
I'm going to stop you there, Derek, because it's actually because I have something to contribute to this as well. But it's a larger conversation, and perhaps we could park that for next week.
It's probably a show where we would pick one ourselves that we think needs to be redone, or I don't know. But it's going back to the statues as well. You see,
I would be in Marco's camp on the issue, which I know is probably not aligned to what a lot of people might expect or what Derek might expect. But I think it's an issue because this is the whole argument about, you know, art versus.
Yeah, but that their entertainment, and they deserve, they probably need to be tailored for what is an acceptable tone and message. Yeah. But when you see the statues coming down now, and Christopher Columbus got decapitated and that, I think it's a very big political statement to remove a statue, because you see back in the day, they got rid, students overnight got rid of this. Now was long before I was born, right? So don't try and rope me into this one. But they removed a statue of Victoria, and it ended up being a scratching post in a farm somewhere. You know, it was this was like 100 years ago, and I'm thinking, I was planning to put up another picture here, and it just wouldn't support it. So I'm annoyed at myself I didn't test it first. But I was looking at some of the people before profit were looking to take down a statue in Ireland there this week. And I kind of think, are we scrubbing our history as well? Because if we're going along with that, we're then saying it's okay for the Magdalen laundries to be whitewashed with this report by Martin McAleese, or we're pretending that the church they're able to say such and such didn't happen. If we're prepared to kind of scrub our history, entertainment shows and works of fiction, is different to a historical fact being, and I really don't want to get us, not in Ireland anyway, I don't want there to be a risk that if we're prepared to write this fella's whatever statue or plaque down because he was, you know, a slave trader or whatever his story was that was not worth celebrating or marking with a monument, that I think, you know, we're particularly in Ireland, we're very quick to brush our history under the carpet and pretend it never happened, and I don't want that. I would like to see, as I say now, I know it's a very important political statement, and like when you see Saddam coming down, you could see the relief and the cheer and the joy on people's faces, and it was a very powerful statement. But for me here in Ireland particularly, it's something I want us to take a second thought about, because whatever, it's just we're too quick to pretend stuff didn't happen, whether it's pedophilia or corruption in the guards, or what went on in the laundries and the mother and baby homes. And it's all very recent. Or like, you know, the mother and baby homes were still there in the mid-90s. So I just, that's what my fear for it is. And I think if there is a situation where there, you know, to bring whatever, whoever the person or the historical monument is about, maybe have a second, maybe it's worth looking at this and having a second monument next to it to explain this person's history. And
I lived in Budapest a number of years ago, Budapest in Hungary, and there was obviously a whole lot of statues in Budapest celebrating communism. And at the fall of communism, they removed all the statues and put them in a park all together. So for the historical record, so people could, like, they just weren't on the streets. They were, because people obviously wanted to move away from communism, but they kept the statues in a park as
like a
for the historical
graveyard.
record, like a graveyard for the statues.
Yeah, yeah.
And so therefore they weren't ignoring their history. They weren't saying this thing didn't happen. And the fact that a statue is put up in the first place tells you something about the time when the statue was put up. It tells you about the attitudes of the people who put the statue up, and that's an important part of the historical record as well. I thought it was an interesting idea to have this graveyard for the statues.
I think that's actually, that sounds like quite fun actually, but it's just, if we want to pretend the history didn't happen, we're not doing we're not doing ourselves any favors, and we're not learning from something. So yeah. I accept it's a very powerful statement, and I remember the whole story of the statue in UCC being taken out overnight, and it was great fun. And it's one of those stories that grows legs as it gets retold. And you know, there was a great moment in Cork during the burning of Cork where somebody climbed up onto the courthouse, and where the Lady Justice on the scales are, they took down the scales, and that's the way it was for years. That there was no scales of justice in with the figure, and I think maybe just mark the location, or as you say, everything should move. I'm just afraid that we will start to forget about the history when we should never forget certain events.
One of the most famous one, Nelson's Pillar.
Oh, you know, yeah.
That was blown up.
And that's part of the history. It's what happened to it is part of our history as well.
I'm going to give the last word to Marco.
Yeah.
It's time for bed, people. So I'm going to give the last word to Marco, because I know you've been trying to get in, Marco.
Okay. I just want to quickly talk about the whole statue thing. I think what is important here is it's not the way the history was, but how the history is told. If we see the other sides of history as well, if we've been introduced to the other sides of history, then we're equal, you know, because we've been told only one thing until up to now, and people they don't have a clue of what the other sides of history is. And the fact that people are just vandalizing monuments and things, I have to say that it is up to them. And I was nice to see some imagery online of statues being put down and all. But yeah, it's just understanding, as we all said before, listening, acknowledging, understanding, and changing, and then this will be ideal, you know, whether with the statues or with no statues. But
yeah, well, I think it's important to remember we're growing up from that history, so admitting to it, I think, is important, you know.
It should never be forgotten, but it should it should just be all history should be told in the way that it is, not only one way. And what we've been exposed is just one way of
if we wipe it out, if we wipe out history and pretend it didn't happen, it will repeat itself.
Yeah, saying that white men went to Africa and they were saviors, this is wrong. And saying that they went to Africa, they colonized, they stole, and they did their bit. They have done good things, but there's also, you know, the bad side of it that was romanticized by history, that they were the saviors, the missionaries. The missionaries, because it still happens today. There was an article just the other day saying that there are some religious American people going down to the Amazon now and wanted just to
Oh,
well,
did you see
yeah,
the documentary
whole
there
jazz
with the COVID, with the families and
Yes,
the way
yeah.
they had them separated? Oh my God, my heart broke.
hugging kids and things, but
Yeah, yeah.
it's on my
So-
Twitter, Marco Diaz, if you guys want to read
Oh
it.
yeah, look at him. You see, he's an awful old tart when it comes to it. Can I just say, Neil, calm down. You go to bed now in a sec, right?
I said Marco had the last word, Vanessa.
But you know, no. Well, he can
The
have
last
another
word.
word.
No,
But
no.
there was a picture of a statue, or well, it's a piece really that I wanted to get up, and it's on my bucket list to go and see, and it's in the University of Maryland. It's Jim Henson and Kermit, and it's a lovely piece. It's more than a statue. It's a monument. It's a moment. It's lovely, and I wanted to put it up there, just kind of say, don't touch this, lads, please, leave this one alone. That's all. But if anyone gets to see it, I'll tweet the picture tomorrow.
Okay, so that's grand. I'm going to ask Dublin City Council to erect a statue of King Henry VIII on O'Connell Street, just so we can be reminded that the British once ruled Ireland. That'll make you happier.
What with all his missuses, yeah.
Anyway, on that note, that was a history joke. Derek got it.
Did he?
On that note, I'm going to
I
mute
think
you
there
now,
should be a
Vanessa.
statue.
I'm going to mute you now, Vanessa. I have to be up for work tomorrow. Would you stop it? I just want to thank you all for joining in. For those of you in the chat pit, I'm not going to get all the names right, but the regulars in there, JDF Reality, Vanessa, that's you. Janet, we also had John Toomey in there. Donde Esterici, there's loads of people there, so it was a busy place. Thanks to our panelists, the Queen in Waiting, Vanessa Foran,
Statue in waiting.
Statue in Waiting. Looking forward to his dinner with friends on Saturday night, Derek O'Donoghue, if his hair looks nicer than his wife's. And and big thanks to our special guest, Marco Diaz.
He's in bullying form, isn't he?
I tell you, he is. Must be love.
We'll be back next week. You'll all have been burnt out from your shopping trips to Penny's and to Dundrum Town Centre and all your local shopping malls by then. And we will see you again soon. Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everyone. Go to bed.
See you, Marco.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. See you next week.
Good night.